What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Ian Katanak, aka the Renegade Writer from ConsciousWritersTribe.com, here today to present to you a conscious writer, a conscious artist, week number 7 of my deep dive into Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. Last week, we got into God, but this week we're getting into listening. We're getting into how to overcome jealousy, how to transcend the limitations put on you as an artist. We're going to be bringing in more books than ever, more philosophers than ever, because this is a pretty beefy chapter. This chapter went, compared to the other chapters, this one's pretty beefy, and chapter 8's beefy also. We're talking 20, 30 pages, as the last chapter was about 10 pages. And if you are still here, if you've been listening or watching, this is your first time here, hit subscribe, because I am trying to create a new baseline for conscious artists out there. And by conscious artists, I mean people, individuals who create content that is trying to change the world. Not for money, not for fame, or to feel good about themselves, to make a substantial change within their lifetime in the world. And by substantial change, I mean less violence, more love, less hierarchy. Boom. So, to get there though, we need to learn to listen. And there is a great book by Michael P. Nichols called The Lost Art of Listening. I read it on ebook a couple years back. And I would also recommend the book Nonviolent Communication on this. But it has become hard for us to listen because of our ungrounded lifestyle and society. And the two times when it's hardest to listen are when someone's telling you something you already know, like by heart. If someone's telling me about like a book I've read 10 times and it's redundant, especially like if I'm mentoring youth or something and they're telling me, sometimes I'm just like, yeah. But that's the time when it's most important to listen, because if you ask any pro writer or pro athlete, the fundamentals are what's most important. They've drilled the fundamentals a million times more. And all the fancy stuff that they do is just like the icing on the cake. So if you surround yourself with conscious people, then you will, hearing the same thing over and over again will be fine, and you should be listening because they're going to be saying something substantial. And the other side of the coin is when someone is saying something that you disagree with, or that's very polarizing. If you're in the fake world of politics and you're on one side, if you like Joe Biden and there's a Trumper going off, you just shut them off because they're an idiot. Or if you're a Trumper and the Biden people are talking, you shut them off because they're an idiot. But that is a very important time because someone is offering an alternative perspective. And you can also see I like to listen in those situations when I know someone is totally wrong, totally off base in objective reality, and even the multi-consciousness reality. They're just coming from a very weird or like off perspective that's like very polarizing or militant. I like to listen because it helps me see some of their psychological weaknesses so that in places where I don't have to go wrong. But if you structure your life right, you don't ever have to deal with any of those people. It's very hard for me to get in situations with those people, and it's 100% my fault. If you're going to a fucking bar still, if you're going out to bars, you're going to meet dumb people. If you're going out to watch a football game or even to just random social events that have no real merit, that aren't based on anything, you're going to get hit with so much fluff. That's obvious. If you're talking to your friends from high school still that haven't evolved, fluff. Who cares about the drama? Who cares about the gossip? But one of the main things about listening, and what Julia Cameron is talking about, she's really not talking about listening in terms of like listening. But to be an artist, I think listening is important, especially if you want to be a writer, for dialogue, to understand what's going on, to understand the nature. But she's talking about what we've been talking about the past couple weeks, but I don't think she's talking about in as elegant of a way. And if you're just tuning in for week number 7, go check out week 1 through 6, especially week number 6 if you're interested more in creating a co-creative relationship. And I got into that so bad the last week, and it's all over this channel. But listening and improving your relationship with force and flow and with your higher self or a higher consciousness will help more than, like, it's a beautiful experience. And she recommends making sure you do your artist date. And I would recommend making sure to spend some time alone in nature, because that's when that energy really starts to seep through. Even if you're not doing art, it will help reset you. And let's talk about Schelling. And excuse me as I grab the book. We have Mr. Schelling right here. And this book is the first outline of a system of the philosophy of nature. And if you are not into philosophy, then I wouldn't really recommend this book. I would recommend Michael Tessarion's Intro to Schelling. Let's see if I can pull that up. I think it's called Fredrich Schelling, kind of like Friedrich Nietzsche. Michael Tessarion is a controversial figure, but the book is called Schelling, Understanding German Idealism. And it's very important if you want to go deeper with creativity, I think, and I made this connection years ago, that Schelling had this philosophy of nature, and he thought that God, I mean, you've probably heard this before. This is the old adage that God, we are conscious, and we have an unconscious, right? But where did our unconscious come from? Where did nature come from? Why do we have this? And some would say that God, Schelling would argue that God created nature as a way to realize his subconscious, because God also has a subconscious. The higher energy isn't perfect. It isn't this omnipotent conscious being. It also has different levels of consciousness. And I think we talked about it on this channel that there really isn't an unconscious. That's a beginner word. There's different levels of consciousness in communication. But Schelling really tapped into, and then so God realizes itself, I'm sorry if I was saying himself, through nature, and God's unconscious is realized through infinity. And this is getting into the Kabbalah and other occult knowledge. But the reason to talk about this is that there is a connection to nature. There is a connection. There's different levels. And Julia Cameron is talking about our relationship with God. And God is a creative being. God is pure creation. All around us is pure creation. And I'm sure you've heard this, let me let the cat out, that from the Christians, like, oh, sorry, everybody. God is so perfect. The world, how can it not be that there's a God out here creating this world? And we, once again, like I said, if you're a Christian, get the fuck out of here. If you're a Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Jewish, there really is no place in Conscious Writers Tribe. Do we need to be accepting? Yes, but are we dealing with low vibration people? No. So, our relationship with God, and the way to connect most with God, your higher self with higher energy, is through creation, through the breaking of the flow. We talked about auto-wrong, the traumatized self, the frozen self. That's why it's important. And one of the main blockages of this flow, and we've talked about this a little bit, I think maybe in the first couple weeks, is perfectionism. And I'm going to recommend this book again because I'm sure I have before. And it is The Gifts of Imperfection. Let go of who you think you are supposed to be and embrace who you are, by Brene Brown. And Brene Brown is very cliche out there. Like, Brene Brown, like all over Instagram, quotes and TED and YouTube and TV and blah, blah, blah. But she has some good points, and especially this book. Some of her later books, like Daring Greatly and stuff that I've read, don't hit this mark. This one's short and to the point. And she says that perfectionism is not the same thing as striving to be your best, because striving to be your best has no blockage. That's just moving. That's pure movement. Perfectionism is not self-improvement, because if you're being a perfectionist, you're not self-improving. Some of us, focusing on improving ourselves every single day and putting in the work will make sure that we get projects done. Focusing on those goals will make sure that it happens for us. But worrying about perfection, and we've all done it, will kill our consciousness. It will kill that creative force. Because God is not perfect. God makes mistakes. Energetically, things happen that aren't correct. It happens all the time. We got programmed so hard by Christianity and all this stuff. God's the omnipotent and perfect being, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. Look around you. Look at the destruction. Yes, we have free will, but there's also, if you understand energy, nothing can be perfect. There's chaos out there. There's mismanagement. If God really is omnipotent, sometimes he probably mismanaged situations, because I've been a part of what felt like divine situations, but then I realized that everything seemed aligned, but then there was these little cracks in the system with certain relationship partners or with jobs or something, and it just all came tumbling down, like, it was more chaotic than anything else, and it probably outright to a higher energy seemed like a good match, but inwardly it wasn't examined enough. And sometimes that's what happens. Sometimes God, or energy puts you together with the best potential partner in your general area. Your best potential partner probably doesn't even live on this continent. They're probably somewhere else, but obviously you're not going to link up with them. So, continuing on, perfectionism is a self-destructive and addictive belief system that fuels this primary thought. And it really is an addictive thought, because people, as we'll talk about, I think maybe next week, spend years not creating art. They spend years focusing on certain poems. All of academia is a fucking perfectionist nightmare. It's a fucking, we'll get into this later, but it is an addictive belief system. And quote, these are all quotes. Perfectionism is self-destructive simply because there's no such thing as perfect. Yes, there's the only thing that is perfect is now, the moment, consciousness, awareness. That is perfect because it is unbroken. But why would you want to control that? But we do try to control that. Perfectionism is addictive because when we invariably do, because we all experience shame, judgment, and blame. All of us are going to get it. All of us experience this all the time, and it's part of the human experience. We're going to, talk about this more next week, actually. But just as a side note, there are ways to reduce the spam comments, and they're not unethical. You can shut off your YouTube comments. You can turn off the dislike. You can just create to create. You can self-publish. You can market the way you want to. You can literally have, I would actually recommend that for a lot of people, because, and to leave a contact form on your website that asks them that with a statement that says, please, in this message, strive for authenticity and treat me as a human being. And then maybe make them answer a question, right? Like what's 2 + 2? So they're not a bot, and have some bot stuff. And you're going to get a lot less spam. For someone to have to go to your website and go to your contact form and contact you is a lot harder than just spamming this is dumb, you don't understand anything, on the bottom of somebody's YouTube channel. For someone to reach out to you in a non-public platform, like on your website, is a lot harder because it's also private. A lot of people get off on being down in the YouTube comments talking shit. I have a zero tolerance policy, even because why would I want to deal with trolls? Why would I want to engage in that? And maybe one day when I can't handle the comment section, I'll just shut off the comments. When that hits that point, I will do that. And it's sad, but why would you deal with that? Why would you deal with negativity? Not just for you, but for your audience. Maybe you don't even read the comments and you just let them slide, and that's maybe cool too, but why would you let your audience be reading this stuff? Because there's blocked people everywhere. There's people out there who want to tear you down because they're not doing anything. I have never seen someone on YouTube or Instagram who's talking shit, who has a public profile. Not just, some of them have a public profile and are doing something, actually doing something artistic. If they're critiquing artists, none of them have a public profile and books on sale. None of them. Because it doesn't go together. These people are projecting out. I critique people. I'm going to be critiquing people, but it's because their books are garbage. It's because they actually deserve it. They're getting lifted up by publishing houses and stuff as a marketing ploy and as a tactic to keep us at base level consciousness. And some of my favorite works on this, on recovering from some of these feelings of shame and judgment and jealousy, which she talks about, is Karol Truman, Healing Feelings from Your Heart, which we think we talked about this in week number 1 or 2. Once again, we're bringing up a lot of old people, but if you haven't got these books yet, excuse me everyone, I'm sorry that was maybe loud. If you haven't got these books yet, get the books. And then Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. This is the one I would recommend everybody to start off with. Feelings Buried Alive Never Die, Karol K. Truman. And she has a very intricate and interesting and unique system to dealing with your emotions that I think unprecedented. I did not know it. She uses something called the script. We talked about it. If you've been watching all these, but I would just recommend checking it out. Jealousy. So jealousy is a big thing. Have you ever felt jealous of somebody? Have you ever felt jealous of a relationship partner or someone you had a crush on? We all have. But how deep does your jealousy go? For a long time, my jealousy ran very deep. It was a wicked form of jealousy, man, for years, probably. And I don't know where that came from. I think that came from a fear of rejection, a fear of loss of love, and just being around unaligned people that I felt like the whole world, maybe you felt this, that the whole world, like if I lost this person or if something happened, that the whole world was shit and there was no one else out there for me. And that's a very toxic pattern. That's a very toxic behavior. And if anyone ever tells you that, like, oh, you'll never find anyone better than me, dump them now. Like that type of shit does not fly because that's not true. And one of the ways I overcame jealousy is just exploring in the extremes. Like, for instance, in relationships, trying to explore open relationships, polyamory. That's a very easy way to confront the darkest shadows in terms of relationships. And maybe that's not for everybody, but if you're single and you want to get, and you know you have some jealousy issues and nothing seems to be happening, maybe even just reading into polyamory and reading how, and talking to polyamorous people and knowing how they do it. I learned most of it from just talking to them and seeing how they process them. Like, dude, I mean, why? Once again, it's the Christian model. A lot of these things are these Christian models, and there's no monogamy or polyamory is not better, but a lot of this stuff has been programmed into us, and we shouldn't necessarily feel jealous over stupid things. Like, yes, if you're at a party and your girlfriend's getting hit on by a fucking, male model, you're going to be like, oh man, like it's going to feel weird. But being jealous about that later, being spiteful about a situation that you couldn't control and that your partner handled well, that's when things start to get weird. And one of the most perplexing things about jealousy is you should want people to be happy. You should want people to have fun and like feel good. And it's just a projection out of your own self. And so we've been hearing that since elementary school. Risk taking. So I have an interesting perspective on this because I have taken a lot of risks. I was into extreme skiing and extreme sports, martial arts. Like I've suffered a lot of injuries. I was just out longboarding right now. Like I've taken a lot of risks in my life. I've said a lot of things. I've gotten fired from a lot of jobs. I haven't taken a lot of shit. I mean, I have, of course, but I've felt like I've lived a risky life, but it doesn't really feel that risky because pain does not exist. Social pressure does not exist. The government does not exist. Time does not exist. It's all up to you to define and create your life. And a book I really like on this topic it's called Eddie Would Go, and it's about a surfer named Eddie. Let's see. A surfer named Eddie Akui, and he's big wave surfer from Hawaii, local boy, and it's kind of a life story, and it's about taking risks in his life and moving forward and competing against like the rich white kids, and it's really good. But spoiler alert, at the end, I'm not going to tell you how he dies. Eddie dies in the most noble way possible, like the most badass and noble way, and he took a risk, man, and sometimes you need to look at those things. You need to understand those dynamics. I would also recommend the documentary Like a Lion about Tanner Hall, the greatest skier of all time, and his recovery from 2 career-ending injuries, 2 separate incidents. And sometimes things go wrong, man. Like my best friend, when I was 19, we lived in Oregon. We were both ski instructors, and he died in a preventable ski accident. He died by being dumb and being too cocky in the wilderness and taking too much risk. And he gave me this book. He was on an ego risk-taking trip, but most of us are not, or most of us are taking it in weird ways, like even skiing and stuff. Like that's getting it out, but why wouldn't I want to be risk-taking on that same level with my website, with this Conscious Writers Tribe community? and trying things out on that same level, like how I risk my body. And you should think of it that same way. Why not risk your sanity? Why not risk your framing of reality? Why not risk what your job, your house payment, your pension plan, all these things that are bullshit? Because once again, pain does not exist. Happiness is relative. Money and happiness do not correlate, especially once you get over like $50,000 a year. It doesn't matter anymore. None of this stuff really connects except what you want, what your desire is. And as we've seen, art is connected to trauma. Art is connected to God. Art is connected to nature. Art is connected to you being and becoming your highest self. So, that is all, everybody. Let's look at some of the exercises. I didn't really see any ones in this that week 7 that I like. So once again, these are really for you. I talked about these before, but this program is for you. I'm just here to provide some extra resources and get you motivated to be a writer. This is not a vlog about what I've done and like a lot of these other Artist Way series. They're kind of garbage. And yes, I'm ranting. Yes, it's a little bit out there. But this is for you. This is not a fucking joke. You need to transcend trying to prove something to your parents. You need to transcend trying to prove something to everyone else. And you need to change the world. Boy, girl, man, woman, it, they, whatever pronoun you want, you can do it. Please. Don't settle for less. Publish. Watch my writing motivation series. But that is all for today, everybody. I will see you guys later. This is the Renegade Writer from ConsciousWritersTribe.com. Hit subscribe. Peace.